What is up, everyone? We are fashionably late. I know that should not surprise any of people that listen live every week, but this is the F6P NFL DFS Kickoff Show. I am your host, Keith Flemming, joined as always by the man that I call the brain for a reason, Joe the Brain Matz. Joseph, what's going on?
Not much. Just basking in, at least personally, my best week of DFS ever. Where I think I made more than 7 times what I put in last week, so that was nice.
Boy. Yeah, we killed it last week. I hate being, those guys are like, man, our picks are awesome.
We did last week, yeah.
We did. It was a small slate. We literally, basically broke it down to all the guys that went off. I mean, Shakir was both in our top 3 wide receivers. Obviously we're all over Evans Baker. We did. It was a great week. I'm disappointed because if I would have not pivoted from Cade Otton, who I was on early in the week, to Josh Reynolds, to then Trey Palmer because he woke up angry, I would have won, oh my God, a ridiculous amount of money. But that is DFS. It's really tough.
Yeah.
It's going to be a weird week. Obviously, you got 2 games. I'm still going to probably put more money in a 2-game cash lineup. Just do very small single entries. Like right now, I think I'm in like $100 and a $200 single entry with 277 people. And because you're going to share lineups for sure. I mean, in a 277-man field, but
yeah,
it's a lot less than, some of these are thousands or whatever. I do like the showdowns, but again, you don't have to get into these giant showdowns. Either do like a 50-50, double up where you put a bigger amount, on that lineup to where you'll double your money than trying to play, some of these were like, I've seen some that are like $10 and there was 150 entries. I mean, you're going to get murdered. That's hard to do on a full slate. Right. It's impossible on a 1 or 2 game slate. So just be advised. But, what we've done the first 2 weeks of the playoffs is we went through and we give you our top 5 plays at each position when considering the price. If you've been listening, we didn't obviously just take the top 5 guys because that wouldn't be very much fun or help you out at all. But obviously this week, there's no point in doing that. I just kind of want to have an open dialogue with you and let's kind of go through, where we're at right now for this cash game slate. And again, that's what we're trying to focus on. I'm going to start with that there, to me, is one giant mismatch, and that is how all my lineups have been starting, and it's the 49ers passing game versus the Detroit Lions secondary. Since week 8, when the Lions went to this man defense that they are now running almost 40% of the time, run defense, the good, right? There's good there. Number 1 in the NFL. They've been fantastic versus the run. Obviously, to beat the Niners, you need to slow down CMC. That's a huge key. The problem in that time, they are literally one of the 4 worst pass defenses in the NFL, and they are playing a QB and a number 1 wide receiver named Brandon Ayuk, who absolutely torch all the things the Lions do. Like you look at every man stat, Ayuk, off the charts. Purdy off the charts. Say the Lions get some pressure. Guess what? Against man, Purdy under pressure, off the charts. Top 5 in the NFL among QBs. Ayuk, top 5 in yards per route and fantasy points per route run against man defense. So that was automatic for me. Like it was immediately Purdy and Ayuk. We picked against this Lions defense. We were right with Baker. We didn't the week before because I just couldn't trust the Eagles. But I mean, I picked Nick Mullins twice in the last 3 weeks and it paid off both times. Why? Playing this Lions defense. I'm thinking about go ahead and just counting in Kittle with him. Go ahead and tell me your thought process. Do you agree on the Purdy Ayuk? And then what do you think about adding, Kittle? Because you can get those 3 for a relatively small chunk of your salary, and it still leaves you a lot of flexibility to do a bunch of different things.
I mean, I'm 100% with you on Purdy Ayuk. I think that's the no-brainer for me. I mean, you can talk yourself into every quarterback here, where obviously, Mahomes might be the greatest of all time. Lamar, just because of his legs, and you were great about pointing out that last week, the Josh Allen potential advantages there, where Kansas City's not always been great about stopping quarterbacks running.
26 in the NFL this year. That's not good.
Yeah. So, like, that's a major problem when you're facing Lamar Jackson. So, like, yeah, you can talk yourself into Lamar, even Goff, on the road, whatever. They're going to have to pass probably just because I think they're going to be losing. But you're right. Like, Purdy's $100 more than Goff. He's facing a much worse defense than Goff. And, I mean, Mahomes, for as much as I think you can easily talk yourself into him always, not a lot. When you really break down his 20-point games over the last, 10 weeks?
The season. Just say the season. I mean, it's not a lot.
Now, yeah, where early on in the season, we were getting classic Mahomes, 20-pointers consistently coming. Then you go week 8 onward, 2 20-point games since week 8. And he is now facing the best defense in the NFL. Now,
No. DVOA, the best defense of all time after the divisional round. Highest DVOA of any defense since they've been keeping the stat.
I mean, now you could argue me into, because I was reading the not Outsiders anymore, but the FTN preview, and they were breaking down that by weighted DVOA, this is, I believe, the highest ranked team ever, the Baltimore Ravens, and 10 of the previous 14 highest ranked, when they made the Final Four, 10 of those 14 teams won the Super Bowl. 12 of them went to the Super Bowl. So you could talk yourself into Mahomes because he's going to have to throw so much, or Lamar because he'll probably win. But yeah, when you considering how hard it's been for Mahomes to get those 20-point games, mostly because of factors outside of his control, I can't talk myself into that. Plus, Joe Tooney's probably out there, all-pro guard. That's another strike against him. So, yeah, unless you're springing for Lamar at 7,700, I think it's clear that Purdy's the move.
All right, 2 things real quickly before you get into Kittle.
Yeah.
I do want to bring this up. Number one, your point to Mahomes and just like the points he scored, the Chiefs have scored 20 points or more only 8 times, or excuse me, 24 points or more 8 times this season, or 10 times this season. They're 4-6 in those games. It's just they're not putting up the points that they normally do. Excuse me, the defense has only allowed 24 points or more. They haven't allowed 30 points all year, and it's just the Chiefs' offense has not been able to keep up. It's the receivers. I mean, sure, Mahomes could find a way. He could be great. The bottom line is there's 3 elite defenses left in this conference championship slate. And then there's the Detroit Lions. They're not a terrible defense because they're very good on run. They've stood up in the red zone. Like, all those things are true the last couple of weeks. But their fatal flaw, when you got Purdy and Shanahan scheming up stuff, you're running man versus George Kittle and freaking Brandon Ayuk are 2 of the worst people that you get one-on-one on an island with in the NFL. I don't really care if Debo's super healthy. I don't think it makes a difference. We know he's better against zone anyway. I just think you have to take that. And again, don't discount the rain last week. I know that he did not look
100%,
great.
100%.
He has played 2 games in the rain. They've both been really shaky versus the Browns and then this game. Now, against the Browns, if you remember, he led them back, though, at the very end of the game, and they missed a game-winning field goal. Last week, despite not playing well, he led them down the field for that game-winning score. I still believe in Purdy. I think people might be off of him because, especially with Lamar and Mahomes, I can understand people going 4 QB slate. Don't overthink this. Take one of the really good QBs. Brock Purdy's been elite all year. He's at home. And again, this defense, unless they do something different, which we thought, well, maybe they'll do against Tampa. They didn't. Puka just had friggin' 180 yards on 10 targets, and they still went out and said, okay, we're going to play Mike Evans one-on-one and see what happens. He had 170 yards and a touchdown. So I love Ayuk. I love Purdy. And then what about Kittle? Do you think that because that stack is very reasonable this week.
The tight end is one of the ones that I've really been struggling to figure out exactly where I land. Again, it's one of those ones where you look at Likely and Andrews, the price is good, but when they're both out there, what does that mean? Obviously,
Andrews at his price is good. I think Likely with Andrews coming back, that's real concern.
That's that's probably a bail. And then, Kelsey has looked as good as he's looked all season the last couple of weeks, but
I like Laporta a lot more, who's right there. If I'm taking one,
I'm leaning Kittle just because I don't particularly like either. Now, I like Kelsey enough because he's Kelsey and it's Mahomes. But, who's better equipped than Baltimore to cover a tight end? We have Kyle Hamilton, Roquan Smith. And the answer is, if there's anyone, it's the Niners who have the best, apologies to Ravens fans, the best linebacking core in the NFL is the Niners, barely ahead of the Ravens. The strongest part of this defense is pass coverage over the middle, which is where Jared Goff and Laporta both love to live. Now, Amon-Ra can go over the middle. He can do whatever he wants. I'm concerned about both Goff and Laporta. I believe Goff has thrown 3 pick sixes in his last 6 games against the Niners, if I'm recalling what I read earlier correctly. So
that's not good.
That's also something to keep in mind for your defenses. But 100% with you on Ayuk. Again, like you said, this is the second worst team covering number 1 wide receivers on the year. Now, obviously, we can say, Nakua was the number 2, Kupp was the number 1. But they've seen a wide receiver absolutely torch them both weeks. I'm with you on Debo. I know there's they went 1-3 without Debo stuff. Again, great job.
I want him out there if he can be, but I don't want him in my DFS lineup.
But another great breakdown in the FTN preview for these games, which is at least the DVOA one. It's primarily built not around fantasy, but just about how the game will play out. But again, when we're down to 2 games, dig into all of it. When you break down the games where Debo got hurt early, which would be the Browns game and the Packers game, that's when Purdy's been bad. And the offense in general has just been
again, though, what I just told you, Joe, those are also 2 of the only rain games he's played in his entire career. So he was uncomfortable. He had the glove on. He took it off. You could just tell it was bothering him. Did you see the play where he took the snap, put the ball in his non-throwing hand, wiped his hand down?
Not a good sign when you have to do that.
I've never seen anything like that. I'm like, this dude has got balls of freaking steel.
It's a crazy thing to do, and also tells you how much he was struggling with it. So throwing the rain, and also that threw off their game plan, because presumably Debo's a big part of their game plan. The 2 games they played just without him, the offense was not as good, but a lot of that just came down to Brock Purdy turning the ball over in those games. When you look at success rate, it was not really a big difference from when Debo's been out there. So when the game plan gets thrown off, again, you're a Falcons fan, you've probably seen, when Shanahan's game has gotten thrown off, it doesn't always go well. When
you're up 20,
no one's better. And the other thing with the Lions matchup, beyond again the man defense stuff, they blitzed the 4th most in the NFL. Number 1 DVOA against the blitz, San Francisco 49ers. Brock Purdy, PFF, grade when not blitzed, 80.7. Grade when blitzed, 85. So Purdy, the entire offense, is better when you blitz them. The only way this game goes awry is if Aiden Hutchinson just has the game of his life. That's the only way, or the weather changes and we get a bunch of rain, which currently there's no call for rain. So clear skies, a matchup that seems built to be exploited. And again, I like the Ayuk and also the Kittle combo more if Debo's not out there, because they're the guys. And also, this is kind of, because the Lions' defense has been so good against the run, it's the week where I might pivot away from McCaffrey. I'm not going to say
I am. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you I am. For leverage,
for leverage,
it's a lot. If nothing else. Because you got to think that, again,
a lot of people will have them.
Yeah, Dave Eddy has got me saying it every week that there's 3 things that are certain in life: death, taxes, and CMC and cash. And I have followed that rule very successfully this year. But in this slate versus that defense, I like the value. And I'm not saying CMC probably could score 20 points, but remember, if he's at 9K, we really need 27 points to be hitting that 3 times number that we really in a perfect world. That's what everybody hits. That was kind of what our lineup did last week. It was I think 165 points or whatever. So those 3 for me are in. Is St. Brown in for you? Because that's the next guy like that I have in because they're down. I don't know how you can't. He scored at least, I think, 20 points in 6 straight. I feel like he's matchup proof. And if I think Goff's going to throw it 40 times, which I think that's going to be the case, I got to have the guy getting like 27% of those targets.
I mean, the other guy that I'm considering, because, yeah, again, all in on the Ayuk train, besides Amon-Ra, is Rashid Rice. So to me, I'm definitely throwing in one of those two guys. I'm locking in one of those guys in every lineup. It's a 1,400 difference. Again, the Ravens, best defense that there is in the NFL, but not crazy dominant against number one wide receivers. Like just going by DVOA, so that's factoring in like your yards per attempt, the amount of touchdowns scored against you. Against tight ends, they're 8th. Against wide receiver 3, 5th. Wide receiver 2, they're number 1. Number 1 wide receivers, they're 12th. Marlon Humphrey might not play, who's their best corner. So if Humphrey doesn't play, I might pivot to Rice just because I don't see Kansas City just shitting the bed and scoring 13 points.
My
as
only
good as this defense
pushback
is.
to Rice, because I agree, I think the Chiefs are going to score points. I am, though, concerned about both Rice and Kelsey because I think Kelsey is the guy that if I was the Ravens, I would say we're taking him away. Like we saw how important he still was last week. And they have multiple guys who can do it. Kyle Hamilton can do it from safety. They don't have no linebackers like the Buffalo Bills had last week. The deal with Rice is everything you said is right, but that was the same case last week with a team with basically one wide receiver and they shut him down. So that's the only thing that concerns me. I know it's good as Stroud's, but obviously Mahomes is on a whole nother level. To me, for the Chiefs, if we're looking at a guy, it's Pacheco, who right now I'm going back and forth between him and Gibbs because I'm going to play Justice Hill again, which I guess I should get that out of the way real quickly. He's 4,800 again? Is that right? I think that's right.
Yes, that is correct. Or wait, is he even cheaper this week, actually?
He may be.
But no, it's 48. It is 48.
Okay, so he's 48 for the second straight week. He played 55% of the snaps last week, okay? So he was the Ravens back by far in the most, on the field for most of the Ravens offensive plays. More good news. He ran routes on 55% of their passing plays. He got 2 red zone touches. What's going on, Jamie? Thanks for coming in, buddy. And I think that you can't go wrong with a play like that because at 4,800, it was kind of like last week. He only got us 9 points. Was it great? No, but it didn't kill us, right? Like it actually, for what we were trying to do and what we could afford, put into that place, he was by far the best option in that price range. It's the exact same thing again this week. And I know he's going to be on the field a lot, no matter what the situation. Say you do believe in the Chiefs. If they're down, Justice Hill is going to get a lot of action. And then not only is he a pretty safe play for a guy in this price range, he could potentially go off. And then, oh, by the way, the Ravens run it more than any team in the NFL, meaning that he should see a minimum of 7 to 10 touches. I really like Justice Hill at his price. I should have said, actually, before I even got into St. Brown, we got into Rice, he's definitely in my lineups. What about you?
Oh, yeah, I like the Justice Hill play a lot. I think you want to be throwing, again, because we got to find, we're all obviously going to have one wide receiver you're trying to, save money on. But because of the way these lineups break out, unless you're going completely different than what you and I are talking about, where we're saying we want to spend on 2 wide receivers this week, you got to find a cheap running back. And I think it's pick your Raven. Because, it's like we talked about last week. The difference between the run defense and the pass defense of Kansas City is massive. Again, L'Jarius Sneed, one of the absolute best corners in the NFL. 5th overall this defense against the pass. 27th against the run in DVOA. Actually, they and the Ravens are 2 of, I believe, only 4 teams where, by DVOA, teams are more efficient running the ball than passing. And now with the Ravens, that's because they're number 1 against the pass. They're still 7th against the run because they're awesome. But yeah, Kansas City, bottom 6 defense against the run. And, the Ravens are the best team running the football. And that's
and again, they struggle with running QB. So you got Lamar, who they struggle with, and running backs, who they struggle with.
And the other thing is, by the way that DVOA, I believe this got adjusted a couple of years ago, they have filtered out QB scrambles for running DVOA. So now designed runs that they feel are designed, those still count in there, which obviously plays a part.
But if they drop back and go.
Filtering out the scrambles that Lamar is so good at, this is the best running team in football. And yeah, I think they are probably going to be winning. I think, like always, I think if you're up against Kansas City, you prefer to keep Mahomes off the field when you can too. So that's another reason to run. So obviously you have options here because all those guys are cheap. I know that Kansas City's especially been bad against power runs. So that's an argument for Gus Edwards, who's also the most likely touchdown scorer. But it's $700 less. I know Edwards, I think, got banged up in the fourth quarter, but Hill was still seeing a heavy amount of play before that. And then when you factor in the receiving, I'm with you. I think Justice Hill is probably the best play. I'm going Gibbs, personally, over Pacheco. I don't know. I think Detroit's going to score points in this game. Again, there's a chance that we get the Goff meltdown and he's throwing pick sixes and it all goes to shit. But
let's rephrase that. You feel confident they're going to move the ball?
Yes, I do like that. I do feel confident they will move the ball.
I agree.
Again, I think Ben Johnson, one of the best play callers, is probably going to end up taking the Commanders' job and making me really sad for a long time, as the Commanders might actually be good now.
No, but, on it. Sorry.
But yeah, with Gibbs, the upside is, again, 4 receptions in both playoff games. So we're getting that even if they fall behind. But what I especially love is the best way to attack this San Francisco defense is, A, you want to run the ball, which is what we saw Green Bay do last week, where Aaron Jones, again, had another 100-yard rushing game, looked awesome.
They struggle more with running backs who can get out to the outside, which
exactly. It's the outside zone runs. That's where this team, again, great linebacking core, some powerful guys up the middle. But when you get to that outside zone, that's where you can hit them. And, again, Aaron Jones, 50-yard run last week. The 49ers, by DVOA last week, 79% rush defense. And, again, positive numbers are bad for defense in DVOA. So 79% on plays marked as end or tackle against Green Bay, compared to negative 36% on the plays where Green Bay ran up the middle. And obviously the splits are not usually that stark, but that is the story of this defense on the season.
Well, so that's why what's his name, Armstead or whatever back, like he is such a great D tackle.
So that's why this is, even with, unlike the Ravens, where I'm happy to go cheaper and go with Justice Hill, I'm not going to save the 800 to get David Montgomery because again, he's the more power back. He's not a bad runner outside zone, but that's why you draft Gibbs 12. As crazy as I still think that was, because you want to use him in this situation to get to the Super Bowl. He's the guy, and then also
not take a running back 8th if you're gonna be awful, right? Like that's probably a bad.
Definitely don't do that. Yeah, I will say if you're gonna breach on a running back, do it when
you're good and you have a QB.
It's already good, and it's like, oh, this gives us that little boost that we need. And also, again, if they fall behind, I'd rather have Gibbs than Montgomery.
Oh, for sure.
So yeah,
so
for me, it's Gibbs Hill.
This postseason.
That's something stupid, I'm sure.
7.25 yards per touch. What's crazy, he's only had like 16 rush attempts. I think if they're going to win this game, like if they're going to pull the upset, he's going to have to be heavily involved. And that's why I keep going. Like, again, it's either Gibbs or Pacheco. Let me go just try to make the defense for Pacheco. Obviously, he's running very well. He is their back. I mean, he's out there all the time. And the big thing is, again, no McKinnon. And one of the few ways you can kind of move the ball versus this Ravens team when you have a great QB that, like I think Mahomes has reached that level like Brady always had where it's like, okay, I may not be able to make the big plays, but I'll get 5 yards here, 6 yards there, and just keep dinking and dunking it down the field. And it just, it drives you crazy if you're a fan of the opposing team. I mean, last week, Singletary, 5 catches on 7 targets. I think Pacheco is going to be pretty heavily involved in the passing game. And obviously, I think their number one goal, if they're going to, the number one thing that I can see making the Chiefs win this game is a very good Pacheco day on the ground.
Yeah,
And then
I think
obviously
that's the
their
play.
defense, stand up. I do want to say the reason I am leaning more and more to Gibbs is that the stats on this Ravens team, forget the DVOA stuff, because sometimes that's really confusing and hard to understand.
Sure. Just break it down simple for us.
They set the record this year. They beat 11 teams with a winning record. They played 8 games versus a team that was in the playoffs. They're 7-1 against those teams, averaging over 35 points a game, giving up 15 points a game. They scored 24 points or more in every one of those 8 games versus the best teams, and versus the Dolphins, the Browns, the Texans twice, and the 2 teams playing in the NFC Championship, they had allowed a combined 68 points. This defense is elite.
It's pretty good.
This team is really good. And that's why I really am leaning more and more to just, and I know this sounds insane, but a no Chiefs cash lineup where I'm going to load up on Lions, Niners, and sprinkle in Ravens, because I don't feel great about any of their guys. Again, Pacheco is the one guy that I'm strongly considering. Do you want to take a dart on any one of their low price receivers? Hell no.
That's the problem, is because you can talk yourself into, any of the Ravens receivers. You can be like, I think it's this guy's week. And you might be right. Or even like Jawan Jennings, if Deebo Samuel doesn't play. It's like, all right, sure.
Right. Yep.
And then the Lions, it's like, hey, we just saw Reynolds be very productive, as you called. We're still waiting on that potential big Jameson Williams day.
I think it's going to be next year, just an FYI.
Yeah, I think it's going to be next year too. And then, you get to these Kansas City guys. It's like, well, which one do you think is most likely to turn it over in a key situation? That's like the bigger question.
Or make a big drop. It's like all of them.
Right. It's
A, B, C, D.
Richie Rice or, again, Kittle, who are both priced the way they should be because they're the 2 good players. There's no one to trust there. And, hey, I'm not going to tell you, like, you're completely insane because – what's his name was catching passes? Valdez-Scantling was making big plays
Ironically, he's
so
the one guy that I've at least teased and put in a lineup for a second. Just to, sometimes you got to put it in there just to see how it feels.
See how you feel,
yeah. So the next question, because this is going to be a lot for me, we have got to figure out who is that Ravens number 2 receiver. Is it Rashad Bateman or is it OBJ? Because go ahead, Joe. You hammered this stat. It got me 100% on Khalil Shakir. He was the number 3 wide receiver last week, and he was 3,800. So because the Chiefs struggle against him, we got to find who is that number 2 guy for the Ravens.
I think that's obviously the big question. The other thing, too, is Kansas City, pretty heavy man coverage. Now, that might play out differently. We'll see this week. I don't know because obviously you're always scared to go into man coverage against Lamar Jackson. So maybe that they shift towards more zone.
But they have some guys that could play spy. Like they have Bolton. They have some real athletic linebackers.
But if they stick to like more of a heavy man dosage, that also plays into more of the number 2 receiver stuff because Zay Flowers has been much better against zone. Beckham and Aguilar have been much better against man. So, but now that doesn't actually help us figure out which one is which.
So just because you didn't say the exact. So last week, Joe pointed out that the Chiefs versus number 1 receivers, one of the top 5 defense in the league. Number 3 receivers, one of the top
number
5.
2 defense in yardage. Yeah.
So, and then number 2 receivers, they're in the 20s. And what's even more insane is number 2 receivers actually are averaging. It's very slightly, but when you think about the amount of targets and how many first reads and stuff, it's crazy that number 2 receivers have more yardage per game than number 1s versus the Chiefs. And then we said fade Diggs, play Shakir. And that's exactly how it turned out because that's the way it's been all year. I think it's Bateman is the guy for me. If you look at snaps, if somebody can, get me more definitive answer here, I'm with you. But when they play 2 receiver sets, it has been for the last 6 weeks, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman. Bateman is on the field all the time. The last 2 games, he ran 88% of the routes on passing plays, 100% the game before. He's on the field, again, with Flowers for the most snaps week after week after week here recently. And I would just assume and this is not a dig at Rashad Bateman, who I was very high on. I know you actually were too. But
I loved Bateman coming out. I was angry the Giants drafted Tony over him, which I still am retrospectively, I guess, because Tony is horrible.
If you had a shutdown corner, though, you're going to put him on Flowers, not on Bateman, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And 100%. His target volume's been bigger. Like, you could, again, Aguilar, the guy that scares me is OBJ, because this just feels like this is the game why they have
right.
OBJ.
I was going to say, I don't trust Aguilar. So, for me, it's the OBJ Bateman question.
Yep, I'm with you.
Because, we've seen OBJ get in these spots, and, he was on his way to being Super Bowl MVP the last time he got this deep in the playoffs. So, I think, to me, you're throwing in one of those guys. I mean, shit, I guess you could maybe even throw two of them. Let's see what that does on a lineup right now.
Now we start talking about that. I am going CMC with the other guys, and I'm just like, screw it. I'm definitely going no Chiefs. I mean, you can mess around with it. All right. So again, we made kind of the case. If you're listening to this show, do us a solid. If you see some definitive answer from somebody obviously smarter than me and Joe, they can tell you who is the Ravens' number 2 wide receiver, like who is actually going to be the person that the number 2 corner for the Chiefs is going to be covering in those man situations. That's who you want. And please let us know so we can handle our lineups.
I will say that, below Bateman, when you're looking at wide receiver, Valdez-Scantling is like the only guy who's on my radar here.
Right. I agree with you.
So, if you're just trying now, it depends on what you've got going on with your lineup, whether or not that makes sense. But, I think, if you're trying to save as much money as possible, he would be the play.
All right. So, any other Ravens? Like, I'm going to do the Purdy, IU, Kittle stack because this is the biggest mismatch by far. It was like last week, I got a little nervous. I'm not going to lie, Joe, because I went on 5, shows and was tweeting and doing everything, just trying to get as many people to go, look at me, going Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans. Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, when Baker has been known to have stinkers and Evans was coming off maybe his worst game I've ever seen him play, but it was the Lions, and they can't cover these big athletic receivers. Guess what Brandon Ayuk is? He's a big athletic wide receiver. I just like, that's where I'm going. But if you want to tell me you wanted to build your lineup around Lamar, I don't hate it either, because if you start looking at these, games since they've kind of cooked it up a notch, because I've been saying it all year, Todd Monken, I think he should be the coordinator of the year. I think it's phenomenal what he's done with this Ravens team. Again, they're 7-1 versus playoff teams. They beat 11 teams with a winning record. Last week they came out, looked a little slow. He changed it up. They torched them in the second half. 4 drives, 3 touchdowns, a field goal. Go back to the other big games down the stretch. Miami, Lamar, I think it was 5, 6 total touchdowns. San Francisco game, I think he had 3 or 4 total touchdowns. And they've been opening up the playbook more, showing a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit newer stuff. And I saw this at UGA. He's got some stuff that he's been holding in the bag with Lamar and these athletes that they got out there for this game. It would not surprise me if Lamar does exactly what he did last week, and everybody's going, damn it. Really, he was only 7,900. Why didn't I take the bait and try to play him? My counter would be the Chiefs defense, I think, is really legit good. So
right. I'm with you because, you look at the last 5 weeks, he has 3 games where he's hit 35 points. And what's even more encouraging is only one of those games is close. Like the Rams were right there. But Miami, that game was never close. Houston, the first half, I guess, was close, but then it got away quick. And over 35 in those 3 games. But, the big difference is Rams were a bad defense. Miami was okay, but also super banged up. Houston, perfectly okay defense where, they could take it, again, disciplined defense that could take advantage of Joe Flacco's mistakes, but not, a high-end one. Where now you've got Spagnuolo, who, again, multiple Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator. So, this guy is known for coming up with specific game plans. Where even in the years where his defense wasn't one of the best, and it actually is this year for the most part. Again, not so much against the run, but overall.
DVOA, these are the first and second best defenses in the NFL. Or no, excuse me, points per game allowed. Ravens
Points per game allowed. Yeah, I know. By DVOA, San Francisco is rated higher than Kansas City, but I believe by like some EPA metrics, Kansas City is ahead of San Francisco. So there's a real argument. This is the second best defense left.
Ravens third toughest schedule this year. Niners 23rd. That's the reason for the disparity in the DVOA of the two teams.
So yeah, there is a lot of reason. Again, to me, it's Lamar or Purdy. Those are the only two guys I'm really considering. Again, it's a four team slate. You have a lot of options. Those are the only two guys that are going in my lineups.
So if you did, let's just, because again, we're probably going to go Purdy, Ayuk, Kittle. But if you were going to go with Lamar, how would you then, would you have to have Andrews in if he's playing?
I don't know that you have to do anything just because.
Well, I get that. I'm saying, well, let me rephrase that. Okay, Joe. Would you put Andrews? Because he's $5K, and to me, that feels like that's one of those that, it could be an awful decision. But it also could be one where you're going, damn it, Mark Andrews was $5K. Like this guy, most weeks is 6,400 or above.
I think I would, just because, again, it's if we are pairing with Lamar, it's so hard to guess correctly with the wide receivers. Whereas if Mark Andrews is a full go, and everything's saying he's practicing fully right now, there was questions he might even play last week. So I'm guessing we're seeing full tilt Mark Andrews. And if that's what we're getting, then again, Kansas City not bad against tight ends. But
for most point, the reason he shouldn't, or he feels like he's trusting KC, it's probably because I'm one of the suckers. Mahomes is now 9-1-1 in his career getting points. Right. So, I'm all in on the Ravens. I just think they're really good. But Mo, I said it last week, and I ended up being wrong. With the Bills, that it wouldn't shock me if the Chiefs. It would not shock me at all if they win this week. I do think this Ravens team is elite.
Yeah, thankfully for myself, by the time Sunday morning rolled around, I reversed course and was like, no, I'm not picking against.
I was like, you chicken.
I was like, wait, we're not in the conference championship yet. And Patrick Mahomes so far has yet to miss one. So until he does, I think I'm just going to write it.
You know about the Josh Allen curse, though, right?
Oh, if you beat Josh Allen, you then lose.
Yeah, every team that has ever beat Josh Allen in the playoffs, you lose your very next game. It's like 5 for 5, 6 for 6.
It's been the Bengals in Kansas City the last couple of years, where the previous 2-3 years, it was whoever faced them the previous round, then they would lose the championship. Or I guess you're even counting that Super Bowl where the entire offensive line for Kansas City got hurt in the Bills game, and it was problematic in the Super Bowl. Which again, Joe Tooney's out, so that's why.
Hello.
I'm worried about this one. But again, I think that Rashee Rice, if you do want Kansas City, that to me is again the play, because I think, especially if Humphrey's out, I think there's more to take advantage of there than there is targeting the Kyle Hamilton, Roquan Smith area of this defense, which is what you're doing if you're going with Kelsey.
All right, so some other guys I want to mention, because if you just joined us. I'll give you the cliff notes. We're very high on Purdy, Ayuk, and Kittle. We're very high on Justice Hill. Hill is more because of his price. The Purdy, Kittle, Ayuk is just because by far the biggest weakness is the secondary of the Lions. By the way, one of your favorite things, I looked it up on PFF, wide receiver versus any coverage this week. Number one, only one that has an elite matchup, Brandon Ayuk. Tight end, only one, no matter who's covering them, with an above average matchup this week, George Kittle. They're both the top of that. So, and again, all the stats with Purdy on man, pressure, blitz, all that stuff.
Yeah, especially if Debo's a no-go, 100%. You need Ayuk in every lineup.
I'm 100% on it, even if Debo goes. I'm going to go ahead and tell you.
That's fair.
I just think he'll be more of a decoy. I'd be worried that he get knocked out. And, even if he does get doing something, whatever, I think that there's a chance big plays happen against this team. We saw it over and over again last week. We definitely are in whoever the Ravens' number 2 wide receiver. We're going to try to figure that out. Right now, it's Bateman or OBJ. And again, that's just because the Chiefs consistently struggle with that number 2 receiver. I want to go back to the St. Brown conversation because we didn't really dive into it. What is your concerns with that?
My real thing with St. Brown versus Rice is just price. I think it's close enough for me because
So are you
again,
spending up in those lineups playing like 3 backs, or what are you doing?
I mean, I'm looking at maybe doing an Andrews Kittle combo.
Okay.
Is
That's
part of it, is doing a more expensive tight end flex than we normally, because normally when we're doing the tight end flex, we're trying to like find that 3,500 guy who's worth something. But I'm intrigued by that one.
Because I mean, it's just the targets that we know he's going to get.
Yeah.
I just feel like that it's kind of a layup. I mean, they even went down on his price for us this week.
I think probably my biggest concern there is just, even though, again, I do think they will move the ball, it would ultimately shock me less, as much as we've seen Kansas City have their like struggles this season, if Detroit laid an egg than Kansas City did. It would just surprise me a little bit less. And so that's why,
I mean, like
to me,
when
I'm
they
like,
got beat 38-6 by the Ravens in Baltimore and he caught 13 passes
that's
for
true.
102 yards.
That's true.
Is that what you're talking about, Joe?
That's a fair point.
I
Again,
mean,
I'm definitely not advocating Amon-Ra as a lesser. I will say, I think Ayuk, especially, again, 100% of Debo is in play. Ayuk, regardless of price, I like him more than Amon-Ra. That's not the case with Rashee Rice at all.
I've got a lineup already made to where it's Purdy, Gibbs Hill,
Okay.
Ayuk, Bateman, St. Brown, Kittle, Ravens D. Then you want Mark Andrews, you got him. You want Sam?
Yeah, I still got him with 400 left. Yeah.
Yes, 500.
So
you want Gus Edwards.
And I do want Niners defense because, again, the big thing is that they take away the middle of the field. Jared Goff wants to throw over the middle of the field as much as
so you say you are taking Niners over Ravens defense?
Oh, 100%. Like, because think about it. How many sacks the Bills have last week against Patrick Mahomes? It's 0.
0.
Which is, there were 0 sacks in that game because both of those quarterbacks phenomenal at avoiding sacks. So again, the only time we've seen Tooney is out, so I guess that opens it up. But the only time we've really seen Pat Mahomes not be able to function and taking sacks was when he faced an elite defensive line where like 3/5 of his starting offensive line was out.
You mean where he wilted to the GOAT Tom Brady? He was just so scared
to be on
the field with his daddy.
Couldn't handle it. So yeah, it's going to be hard to see a lot of sacks in that game. Mahomes, he'll have the turnover here and there. It's not generally like
I don't know what I was
huge
thinking. You're
problem.
Right. Why would I not spend? If you're going to spend 3,200, spend 3,300 and take Jared.
Yeah. So
the road.
Here's Goff's career record against San Francisco: 3-6. He has not beaten them since 2018. He has thrown at least one pick in each of his last 4 games against San Francisco. A pick 6 in 3 of those games. So 3 of his last, again, like that's probably a little fluky, whatever. 3 of the last 4 games he's played against this team, he's thrown a pick 6, and they're $100 more.
He used to play them 2 times every year. I'm sure Shanahan's on the phone with McVay going, "Hey, you seeing anything out of golf that we can play this week?"
So I'm doing everything in my power. So again, in a small slate, defense can actually matter. So I'm finding a way to fit the Niners defense in.
I completely.
So yeah, I really like the one we just talked about. And again, I like Andrews more than Laporta because again, I just think it's going to be so difficult to throw over the middle of the field, and especially if I have Amon-Ra already in my lineup, that I don't feel a huge need to try to fit in another Lions guy. And I have Gibbs. Yeah, I have Gibbs and St. Brown. I don't need Laporta, so I'm going Andrews. I'll pocket the 400.
FYI, if you do that and say you, unlike me, do not feel good about Rashad Bateman, which I may not feel good by tomorrow, listen to us again on Fantasy and Friends as we do an official lineup. But with that lineup, you'd have $400 left over. You could have Josh Reynolds. You could have Aguilar. You could have Jameson Williams. You could have Bateman. I don't want any of them, but you could have Sky Moore, Scantling, Watson, Tony.
Right.
I think there's a lot of value in that. And I like Reynolds this week. Again, I've been saying it as long as Raymond's out. This will be the 4th straight week. He's going to have a decent game. Like he scored double digits, I believe, in all 3 of the last 3. Raymond went out early. I think the last week of the regular season, he's missed both postseason games. I would love to have 4 or more to go to OBJ, but I can't do that. And but right now I am leaning towards Bateman. I love that we had that discussion on the defenses. Is there any way that you would play Andrews over Kittle with him being 300 less? Like, say you want to go another direction.
I'm trying to look like in what situation that would. I mean, yeah, if you need the 300, I don't hate it because again, I think there's a chance that it's not a Kittle game, whereas I feel very confident it's not a Ayuk game. But I don't know. I would prefer to keep Kittle unless you absolutely need the 300.
How about we do this then, Joe?
Kittle.
Tell me what you feel about this one right here.
Okay.
Still basically kept everything the same, but made one big caveat. We got Purdy, Gibbs, Hill,
right?
Ayuk. We can go Bateman. Again, we can go through all those guys.
Right. The 30s. Under 4,000 crew.
It'll leave you $9K for basically 2 receivers. So if you want to go BJ, you want to go Jennings, you want to go you literally do whatever you want. But what I just have right now, just for shits and giggles, is I'm going to take 2 swings at it, and I'm going to take both guys that might be the number 2 Ravens receivers.
Okay.
Beckham Jr. and Bateman. You throw Andrews at the tight end. That allows me to get CMC in my flex and the Niners.
That's what I was just, as soon as you went down this line, I was like looking at my own lineup, trying to mess it around. I was like, is he figuring out a CMC lineup?
That's exactly what I was doing.
Let's see. And then
I mean, there's actually probably more combinations you can go this way. The question is,
we drop Kittle, we take Andrews, or wait, how do
you have to drop Kittle and you have to drop St. Brown. But if you drop both of them, put Andrews in that position. You have to play 2 receivers basically that are 4,500 and below. And then everything else can stay the exact same. And
I will say the very weird thing about that lineup is that we end up with 3 Ravens pass catchers, and we have Brock Purdy as our quarterback, and that just feels bizarre to me. But
it shouldn't. Did you not? I mean, people, let's just stop with the Brock hate. Dude is unbelievable. He's had.
No. I'm just saying it feels bizarre that we have 3 Ravens receivers, and we're like, we don't have Lamar Jackson. It's somebody else. That's the part and then we also have Hill. So I guess we're really banking on.
I would not end up, to your point, I would figure this out, and I would not have OBJ and Bateman because, to your point, it wouldn't make any sense. Like, I'd probably go Reynolds, honest. I would go Alliance is what I would do. There's probably even a way, there's different ways that you can do
I will say, I really want that San Francisco defense, but you could keep Kittle, McCaffrey, and Ayuk. I mean, that's a lot of Niners, but I'm pretty okay with that because I do think they're going to score a ton of points. In that case, you just drop down to the Ravens defense. That would get you there. You can otherwise, just stick to the 2 Ravens receivers.
All right,
still have Kittle.
Joe, we're doing this live. Let's just figure this out. All right, I got again Purdy, Gibbs, Hill, Ayuk, which we had. If you stay with Bateman, you can throw in Josh Reynolds because obviously we lost St. Brown. Kittle, McCaffrey, Niners defense, and you have $300 to do whatever you want with any of those positions.
So we bailed on Beckham for Reynolds?
Well, I mean,
is that what happened there?
Yeah, but actually I can't get to Beckham because that would leave us at 43. We'd have to get to 44 for him. So you'd have to go cheaper than Bateman. You could do it. I mean, you could go
I kind of like this.
Because if we went Beckham, then you're going to have to choose one receiver from basically the Chiefs. I mean, let's just be honest. You're going to have to take your chance on either Moore, Scantlin, Watson, and the bottom line is one of them will probably score a touchdown. I mean, I don't see the Chiefs just getting blasted. Like I said,
like we said, this is again. You're talking about, I think either 1A or 1B if we're talking greatest quarterbacks of all time at Mahomes, and
so he wins these next 2 games, I'll even shut up. And despite what Brady did to my Falcons, dude's GOAT. But if he wins with this team. Beating the Ravens and then say the Niners.
That's true.
It's over. He just won back-to-back Super Bowls after they lost Tyreek Hill. That's
I think if he wins this one, it becomes one of those. He is the greatest, but Brady still has the better career, and that's
Tiger Jack. Tiger Jack. Tiger's the greatest.
Yeah. Tiger Jack is a good one.
Yeah.
Or I think it's arguably becoming that way with MJ LeBron, where I still think MJ is clearly.
No, I think that's fair.
I mean, we're going off on a tangent here. We're talking about the greatest of all time in other sports. But the point is, Yeah, Mahomes is. I mean, he's already right there, and yeah, he reaches a spot where clearly only Brady is even in the same conversation if he wins that with this crew. But yeah, I don't expect them to get nothing. That's why I do really want to try and find some way to get a Kansas City person in my lineup, which might, again, yeah, if we're going Amon-Ra and you make a strong case where we know he's going to get like 14 targets, then maybe it is just taking a shot on like an MVS and just letting that be like my super cheap play to help me, fit in on McCaffrey or whatever the case may be.
All right, sorry, I was doing some math because
I love it. It's a math podcast now.
I know, you know us. We're just two nerds.
I guess it always has been a math podcast.
So with him being 9K, again, we need 27 points because I feel like St. Brown at 7,800, he's probably going to get around his points. Like I just think that 3 times number, more times than he's going to get to it. With CMC, some of the better run defense he's played this year. Dallas, 14.8 points. Cleveland, 14.2 points. Now, granted, versus Baltimore, 28.1 points. That was obviously great. But what really scares me, he only has 7 games this year. I know only 7. God, Keith. Where he scored 27 points or more, which I know that sounds ridiculous. But again, for cash games and trying to build a successful lineup, you really want every guy to have a good chance to score 3 times their price. I don't know, man. Like what game, or let's put it this way, because actually this is probably a way if we're thinking about putting Purdy with Kittle, Ayuk, and CMC. How does that happen?
Kittle, Ayuk, where we get enough points for all 4 of those guys to justify
like what they just smoke them?
I mean, it would not shock me if they scored 40 points in this game. Again, like all the things that the Lions do. Play more man over the second half of the season, blitz more than all but 3 other teams I said earlier. Those are all things that help the Niners. So, yeah, I mean, if they score 40, I'm not going to be shocked.
I can't go with all 4.
I'm not going to be shocked.
Of having 3 of them and including CMC, but I just think at that point, I'm pivoting off Kittle and I'm going to Andrews. And then we figure some out. I mean, you could even potentially take Justice Hill out of the lineup if you want to do that. Put CMC into the running back. And then again, that's going to open up practically, 4,800 that you could use. It'd be 5,100 that you could use for your flex. Because I just I believe in this.
No, I mean,
that much in it.
I don't think it's like the craziest idea that they scored 5 or 6 touchdowns and then maybe the defenses show out in the AFC Championship and the final score is 20-17. I don't think that's the craziest idea, and maybe it all works out. But in general, I might throw that into one lineup. I might, but in general, I'm with you.
We're talking about, again, cash game lineup. I just don't know if I like that thought process.
It's too much to yeah, I think you're probably right. That's more of a I'm just going all in on this one team who has the best matchup. Although, again, if you put all those guys in, I do think you're getting huge production from. I mean, if we're right about Purdy, then you automatically, I think you're locking in 2 of the other guys probably. So I think you can get huge production from 3 of the 4. Now, obviously, if your miss is McCaffrey, then you just kind of wasted $9,000. So that's the scary part. But I don't even totally hate in the cash game just because of that. Because I think you're guaranteed, if you play those 3 guys, guaranteed 3 touchdowns between them. Like that's how strongly I feel about this matchup. And then if that's if Debo's out. If Debo's in, no, 100% you don't do this. It's a crazy idea.
Right.
But if he's out, even in a cash game, I don't think it's nuts. I think there's an argument for it.
All right. Is there anything else on the slate? Because, of course, me and you doing what we do, we're already at almost an hour mark. Any players that I did not mention that you like? The only one that I just want to, again, stress is I do like Josh Reynolds. I do like Sam Laporta. I just think if you think the Niners, like we do, are going to roll, there's going to be a lot of garbage time. And say if you don't want to go St. Brown, I understand that to spend up for CMC or whatever,
I think there's a lot of value of taking Laporta and Reynolds, who are definitely like their 2-3 options. Gibbs is in that category too, but those guys are only 9,400 combined.
I mean, you can talk me into Reynolds. I mean, I could be wrong. Laporta's just been awesome all year. That's a great connection that he has with Goff in this offense. I mean, by DVOA, the best defense over the middle was San Francisco. And
Fred
by
Warner's a bad mamma jamma.
by a relatively large margin. Now, they were good on the outside. They were still top 10 in DVOA in both. But they were 9th and 10th, so barely versus the best over the middle of the field. That's why, again, if you're in that same price range, give me Andrews, give me Kittle. Whereas, again, if we're trying to find cheap wide receivers, you talk me into any of them. Like we said, take your Ravens pick. Probably at least one of those Kansas City guys will be relatively productive. And then, Reynolds just had a very good game. At some point in his career, Jameson Williams will have a huge game. So, I think you can talk me into that. I'm steering clear of Laporta, though.
Okay. Well, we're going to get together again. Any other guys because I asked you got any other guys, Joe? And I was like, no, wait a minute. I want to talk some more. And then I just talked. So, is there any guys that you?
I mean, I don't think there's really anyone else to cover. I mean, I think we've covered most of it. Obviously, you can always just be like, my gut says McCaffrey gets hurt, and this is a great Elijah Mitchell game. But
I mean, MME, take your shots this week. There's only 4 teams, so crazy shit could happen. I like cash because I want to try to win.
Right. To me, you're going if you're trying to go cheap anywhere. A running back, it's take your pick of the Ravens running backs. They're all cheap anyway. Wide receiver, we talked about it. You can talk me into any collection of these guys, but I will generally be leaning towards the Ravens and Lions guys and not the Kansas City guys, just because they feel cursed. And that's kind of it. So, and a defense, again, I am trying. If you have to. Sure, dropping down the Ravens, I'm not going to freak out. Or even, if you think Kansas City wins, I don't hate that one either. But I will be trying to spend that extra, $100, $300 to get the San Francisco in as many lineups as possible.
Yeah, and just again, anytime showdown lineups, these small, especially 2-game slate lineups, just really think about how do I think this game's going to go, and you can kind of figure out, especially if you guess the game correctly, who's going to score the most points, how it's going to work out to put together a really good lineup. Especially if your gut is telling you that, I feel like, I don't know, the Lions are going to win or the Chiefs, are going to win, whatever. Or if you think, say, the Niners-Lions game is going to be a slugfest and not a shootout, and you end up wanting to go heavy on the Ravens-Chiefs game, like, that's good. But what we do is
Ravens Chiefs only playoff matchup ever with 2 MVPs under the age of 30.
Is it really? Wow.
That's what why am I blanking on his name? Kevin Clark, formerly of The Ringer, said on the Mina Kimes podcast this week. So
if Kevin Clark said it, I believe it. He's
it's usually reliable information. So and ultimately, Lamar Jackson's going to have more MVPs than Patrick Mahomes, isn't he?
Yeah.
It's just occurring to me that Patrick's still I always feel like Patrick is like 3, and it's like, no, he has 1.
He got robbed of 1, though. So, I mean.
Yeah, it happens. Everyone gets robbed. If you're good enough, you get robbed of 1. It's what happens. So.
Yeah, it's just like LeBron James has 4. Come on, give me a break.
Right.
Like, really? He was like the best player in the league for a decade. All right. Anything you want to plug?
I mean, well, obviously, please consume all of the information at Fantasy Six Pack. Again, outside of football, because baseball is rearing up here.
Dude, they are into the baseball. Holy cow.
Right. Like, if you're into that, which I think baseball is a sport where it makes it so, like, I would be happy never playing any fantasy football again and still loving football. You get so much more into baseball, at least if you're like me, where it's like something I barely pay attention to till August or September normally. So do that, and then also obviously check us out tomorrow on Fantasy and Frames.
Yeah, and again on Fantasy and Frames, I think we'll go at 9. That work for you, Joe?
Yeah, and we have decided on our official lineups after workshopping a lot in this one.
as you could hear, spoiler, you're going to kind of know where we're going. But again, last week, both of our lineups over 160 points, both would have cashed in literally, I think
pretty much anything.
Yeah. Like I don't know, like maybe a 10, 20 person slate.
I cashed in one of those free ones, and I didn't even use my official lineup, which was my best lineup. That wasn't even. I think I had like one difference, and so I lost like 5 points. But I won $3 in a 60,000 person free field. So yeah, I was like, wow, I needed to be like spend another $100 of entries last week.
Well,
but yeah, so that's what we did. How we did last week. Hopefully, it continues. I do think. Like the previous 2 weeks, those are like my ideal sizes actually for like slates because it condenses it a little, so I don't have quite as much information. Well, I have less extraneous games.
We talked about the slate last week for an hour and 45, so I don't know how condensed it was.
Right, but I guess it's condensed enough where you can dig deeper on every single game.
Right. No.
Versus if there's 13 games, I'm like I can't go. I can't spend 40 minutes researching all these games.
Y'all don't see Joe's brain like starts to overload once he takes in so much information. That's why we earlier in the week. But we appreciate all of y'all for watching. We say it every week. We mean it. You see our Twitter handles. I don't know why I just messed up on that. Twitter/X handles. Hit us up. Seriously. You ever have any questions? I promise you, as long as we're around, I am happy to reach back out and interact. As you can tell, me and Joe can talk about this shit all day, every day. So
forever.
Be sure, again, follow all the best fantasy six-pack content that there is, which there's tons of it. Thanks, Brad. We enjoyed you. And again, me and Joe will be back tomorrow night. And we will be back for one more NFL DFS Kickoff Show for the Super Bowl. I haven't talked to Joe yet, but I'm going to try to get a bunch of different personalities from Fantasy Six-Pack to come on and do showdown lineups. And basically, me and Joe and Chris and Dave would just rag on them because we're like, do y'all play DFS? No, I'm just kidding. We've done that before. It's a lot of fun just to see where everybody's head's at for, basically a one-game slate. So, but for Keith and Joe, we'll see you guys soon. Take it sleazy.